Hello again, and welcome to Southeastern 16. Today's topic, Texas and the Longhorns' chance of going unbeaten. Texas enters its huge rivalry game with Oklahoma this weekend as a double-digit favorite and the only unbeaten team in the league. But guess what? Tougher part of the schedule is ahead. Chase Robinson, the Longhorns are going to be a big factor in the playoff. I would be shocked if they're not. But a lot of tough games ahead, some interesting matchups. We're going to break all that down.
Yeah, there are some interesting matchups. And I think what we've learned so far in this 2024 season is that no one is safe. And
Mm-mm.
so the Texas Longhorns included, they haven't lost a game yet, but no one is safe. They have some tough games up ahead of them that like you said, we'll look at them. And they're looking at the Red River rivalry right now and saying, we got to take care of Oklahoma because that's a series that Oklahoma has really dominated as of late. And so,
Yeah.
interesting road ahead for the Longhorns.
Well, let's pull up the schedule, Chase, and take a look at what's behind and what's ahead. You can see the result in the middle, next to last column of the right. That is what the Longhorns have done so far. The prediction, PRAD, is what our model predicted the spread to be. The actual line is out to the far right. You can see that the line for the Oklahoma game is 14.5 as we're doing this on Thursday morning. The predictive model has only got it as 12.5. And then you look ahead, you can see the Longhorns are going to be favored in every remaining game, we think, but that means very little so far based on what we've seen in the SEC. Let's start with the Oklahoma game before we unpack the rest. I think the trick for Texas is just to stay, neutral or positive in turnover margin. Oklahoma's had a week off. We'll get some guys healthier. I think that offense will be a little bit more potent. But as you can see, the Longhorn defense has been phenomenal. A season high of 13 points allowed to Mississippi State. I know that this has not played like a juggernaut of offensive opponents kind of slate. And Oklahoma is more known for defense than offense. But I think that the defense is what's kept Texas undefeated and is what is making this team so dominant. I think first order business, take care of business against Oklahoma. Don't let Michael Hawkins have some kind of a coming out party. And I like their chances to win this one, although I don't know that it's going to be easy.
Right. And you look at the results column there that you pointed out, and the most points an opponent has scored is Mississippi State scored 13. I think that shows a lot about this defense. They're not giving up much of anything. Even garbage touchdowns late in the game. They're not giving those up. Like, this is a very strong defense that, once again, with this Oklahoma offense that has really not found its rhythm quite yet. I think that's an advantage in this matchup. And I think Texas will have a lot of advantages because of this defense, because of what they're able to do defensively. But then, Quinn Ewers should be back against Oklahoma, which I think will be a big factor, having him back leading the offense. And really like what I've seen from Texas so far. And I think this will be a close game, like we've talked about in a prediction video. If you've missed that, you can go back and watch it on our channel, our Texas Oklahoma prediction video. But I think it's going to be close. But this is kind of the start of a tough stretch for the Longhorns.
Yeah, I think that the next toughest game, look, the big thing that's going to stand out is the Longhorns are going to be favored in every remaining game. By the way, I got a mistake on the bottom there. They're going to be closer to 12-point favorites in the A&M game as of right now. And I think the actual line is going to be closer than that because of the nature of the rivalry, if A&M is what we think it is. So, take that into account. That's overstated by a couple of points, what I've got at the bottom. But still, what stands out is that this team could be double-digit favorites against everybody else on the schedule, except for the Georgia game, which is guess where? It's in Texas. And I think Georgia will be interesting to see how the Bulldogs respond with a couple more weeks. I think Georgia's had its wake-up call a little bit since the loss to Alabama. The offense looked much better in the second half of that loss. And I think that's going to be – I mean, Georgia really needs to win that game because it's already banked one loss. That is kind of you can play with this one a little bit if you're Texas. But, hey, the biggest obstacle to going unbeaten, and that's what this video is about, will be Georgia, it appears.
Yes, and look, Georgia is going to catch Texas right off of their rivalry game with Oklahoma, which I think is interesting that this matchup is going to come the week after the Red River rivalry. And yeah, this Texas Georgia game is going to be huge because you're right. Georgia's playing good football right now, kind of after that wake up call to Alabama, and we know Texas is playing good football. And Georgia, if Texas goes into this game undefeated, well, Georgia could try to make everybody, in the SEC have a loss. And Texas, if they beat Georgia and remain undefeated, like I think that Texas puts themselves in a clear spot for the SEC championship, and still a lot can happen. But look, I think a lot hangs on this Georgia game. And then Chris, I'm just gonna point out Texas goes to Nashville. Vanderbilt being the wild card right after that Georgia game. That we'll see if Vanderbilt can put some magic together again. But these three games to me are huge for Texas, with their rivalry against Oklahoma, and then to the Georgia Bulldogs, and then Vanderbilt before they have that bye week. But that Georgia game is going to be, we talked about Alabama, Georgia being kind of a game of the year. This is going to be another game of the year, no matter what happens when Texas and Georgia meet.
Yeah, and I think some of these matchups are trickier than the numbers on that are before us. And again, the A&M one should be closer to 12 than 13 based on just a little mistake I made in this. But yeah, I'm going to get into some of the nuances of some of these matchups. Before we do that, we remind you, our channel brought to you by BetOnline, the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. It has every stat, every matchup, even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games. I don't know what the odds Texas is to go unbeaten from here on out, but I bet you can find that on BetOnline. You can at least find the playoff odds, which Texas is going to have some of the best playoff odds to this point in the season. If you think you know your stuff, get in on our $200,000 mega contest. Pick 5 games against the spread every week for your chance at weekly prizes and a share of $200,000. When the game's over, get in on our online casino and in on a game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of over 150 slots games. Head to the website today to get in on all the action. Bet online. The game starts here. Let's just go chronologically down these matchups. Now, the spread for this one is going to be a lot similar, this one being the Vanderbilt game, to what it was for Alabama. I think that one ended up at 21.5. Our model had it in that range. So I think that's what you'll be expecting. But Vanderbilt is a complete wild card, a team that was, if it's not playing well, could lose to Georgia State, which it has. If it is playing its A-plus game, it could beat Alabama, as we know. And the thing that makes the Commodores tricky is they hold the ball. And Diego Pavia, only God and maybe Diego Pavia know what that kid is doing next. He is so unpredictable with the ball. They've turned it over one time all year. This is a game, if you're Texas, you're going to have to lock in on your focus because this is a different kind of Vanderbilt team than what we've seen.
Yeah, I don't know if the goalposts at Vanderbilt can handle them beating another number one team. But, I mean, Texas going to Nashville the week after they play Georgia. I mean, is that a coincidence or what? But,
yeah,
that matchup could be sneaky. I think several matchups. Look, the way the SEC is, nobody's safe, like I mentioned at the top. But we've seen Arkansas pull a big upset. We've seen Kentucky pull a big upset. And they're on the schedule for Texas. Not saying that I think they're going to beat them. No, they could challenge them in ways. But look, I think there's several games on here that Texas could be challenged in. And again, anything can happen with the way the SEC is right now. And we've said it all along, it's going to be hard to go unbeaten in the league. And that's what this video is about for Texas. As we look at these matchups, you look at predictions and it says, yes, they absolutely can. But when you look at these matchups, yeah, they're very interesting, starting with obviously Oklahoma, Georgia, yeah, with Vanderbilt as well, because we've seen what they can do.
The Florida game, look, I think you're glad to have a bye somewhere. I probably would prefer it after the Arkansas game if I am Texas, because that defense is so tough to prepare for. But, hey, the other side of the coin is if you had it there, you'd play 5 weeks in a row. This way you get a breather after 3 games, and those are going to be 3 tough games for Texas, I think, depending on what version of Vanderbilt shows up. But you get Florida. I don't know where Florida's season is going. Florida's played better of late. Big game for the Gators in Knoxville. If they get blown out, that could go south in a hurry because Kentucky is the next week in Florida, then an off week, and then you got Georgia before that game if you're Florida. So they could be beat up and disheartened by that point. They could pull a couple of upsets and be riding high. We just don't know now. I will be surprised if Texas loses this game. But I'm just pointing out there's a lot that could happen between when we're doing this, which is before the Oklahoma game, and when Texas plays Florida that day.
Yeah, a lot could happen. And yeah, Florida it's a hard team to figure out. Let's just be honest. I mean, they have been playing some better as of late, and we'll see where they're at this point. But I look at the Arkansas matchup as possibly sneaky as well. We saw what they were able to do to Tennessee. Like, you take a couple of plays away, and Arkansas sitting unbeaten on the year. Like, that's just it's a good football team that's made some mistakes, some crucial mistakes, but they're a good team, and Kentucky's really good defensively as well. So those two matchups really stand out to me after that Florida game, because you're in this final stretch. You're trying to make a push to get to the SEC championship, to get a good spot in the college football playoff. And then you hit these two teams. We'll get to A&M in a minute because that's a fascinating matchup as well. But you look at Arkansas and Kentucky, and these are two tough games right there at the end of the season, I feel like, for Texas.
Yeah, and Arkansas will have a week off before that game. Arkansas beat Tennessee with a backup quarterback in its building. Guess what? This one's on the road. I don't think it's going to be nearly as easy as the 17-point spread that our model has come up with here, which is, by the way, a reflection on how strong the computers think Texas is, and I don't think they're wrong there. I just think this league is a lot trickier than any of us anticipated coming in. Kentucky the next week. I think Kentucky is a nightmare matchup for a lot of teams. I think the Cats defense is elite. I think the offense is just starting to scratch the surface of its potential. Now, the problem for Kentucky is protecting the passer. Their offensive line has been a little bit of a wreck so far, which is not something you want in the SEC, but the Cats are dangerous. They have already beaten Ole Miss in Oxford. And guess what? The week before this one, Kentucky has a game with Murray State. Is a little bit of a tune-up the week before that. Kentucky's got a bye week. So, again, I think you put a check mark in Kentucky's column in terms of maybe which team could be the freshest team at that point.
Yeah, that's interesting where this game falls and what it looks like for the other teams. That could make for interesting. But I think, Chris, the game a lot of people are looking forward to, kind of a renewing of an old rivalry, and that's that game at Texas A&M. And look, Texas will be going to College Station, Kyle Field, tough place to play. Just ask Missouri going in there, and Texas A&M beating them bad, and Texas A&M has got some really good wins when they play in Kyle Field. And look, it's a rivalry game. We talk about Texas, Oklahoma, how anything can happen. I think it's the same one for this. We haven't seen this matchup in a long time, but the fact that these two are going to meet again, and right now Texas A&M and Texas really are playing the best of anybody in the SEC. We'll see what happens, at the last game of the season. We have over, a month and a half until that game. But look, right now we're circling that one as that could be a really interesting, fun game. Got to imagine that'll be the nighttime game, the 6:30 ABC game that week. Not sure, that's just speculation, but got to imagine it may be a primetime game.
Yeah, Texas has had one of the easier schedules in the league to date. The Michigan game was the toughest one. Obviously, Michigan stout on defense, has beaten Southern Cal, but the offense just wasn't ready to play with Texas. So I think you're going to see tougher offenses coming up. Georgia, Vanderbilt, Florida, Arkansas, maybe Kentucky, depending on what the Cats do, and certainly A&M, which is hitting its stride. But here's the thing about A&M, Chase. I don't know that anybody between today and the Texas game in the last week of the regular season has an easier schedule than A&M. It's got at Mississippi State, LSU at home, at South Carolina, New Mexico State, at Auburn before Texas. Now, nothing is easy in the SEC, as we know, but they will have 2 bye weeks between now and then to stay fresh. And certainly I think A&M will be favored in all those games, which is setting up a game potentially with playoff and conference title implications. And again, it is on the road.
Yeah. It's going to be tough. I mean, and it's going to be fun. And we look at the path for Texas. Anything can happen. But as you see, kind of how the predictor models are showing, Texas could be that undefeated team. But again, no one's safe. Crazy things can happen. We learned that Saturday. No one is safe, and it's going to be hard to get through the rest of this year without getting beat.
Chase, if you're betting, does Texas go unbeaten? What's your guess?
I'm going to say no. I mean, I think again, the way things are going right now, it's hard to confidently say yes. I think a team will go undefeated, and whether it's a Georgia or whether it's someone else who just sneaks up on Texas because they're having a really good day. I kind of lean that way, that it's going to be another team that does this. So yeah, I would say no, but it would surprise me none if they did.
Yeah, I'm with you, and I don't think that's a reflection on Texas. I think they could win the Georgia game and still pick up a loss somewhere, as improbable as that seems, because, I mean, that would be consistent with the way the league is gone. No, Texas may be an outlier to all of it, and that is definitely a possibility. Texas, we could be at the end of the season and say Texas was hands down the best team in the league, but we just don't know yet. The thing that we've also learned is you just don't know until you've really come up against it with the better teams. And maybe Michigan ends up being a top 10 team, and we say, hey, they already had a game, but we don't know at this point. So I think, what was it? Nick Saban had, 2 unbeaten seasons at Alabama?
Yeah.
And I think that the week in, week out competition for Alabama then was not as steep as it is in the league. Now, there's more parity than we've ever seen in the SEC. So, I mean, what this year has told us is you may take a bullet somewhere that you're not expecting. And I think that's not Texas specific. That is applying to everybody right now.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's hard to do that. And again, with the landscape of the SEC with college football, that's what we love. We love to watch fun football, and that's what we got when you get these SEC teams and the parity that there is.
Well, we've got fun football. We've got fun basketball and baseball in the offseason. We still cover it in the offseason. And best way to get that, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. We are here to give you the 30,000-foot view of the SEC. Of course, you're going to get better Texas coverage from your local media than you are here. But if you want to know how they all stack up against each other, I think we do that as well as anybody. The subscribe feature is free. Again, hitting the thumbs up helps our ratings on the algorithm. And if you're interested in advertising, we reach millions of people a year through all our content. Caroline.smith@southeastern14.com. For Chase Robinson, I'm Chris Lee. You've been watching Southeastern 16, presented by Bet Online.